Today's video, we're jumping back to our NHL Offseason Plan series. We're working our way from the 32nd team all the way up to number 1. Today, we review the 12th best team from the regular season, the Los Angeles Kings. 3 consecutive years, first-round losses in the Stanley Cup Playoffs, lots of expiring contracts. What should we expect from them? How do they get over the hump and take the next step? We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're looking at the Los Angeles Kings on the offseason expectations we should have for changes they have to make and any internal business for them to look after. In case you're new to this series, we're going to recap last year. We're going to take a look at some team and individual results, explore any other changes we've seen within the team, we'll look at their cap space, expiring contracts, what they have going on with the draft, and the top questions facing the team heading into the offseason. So first, let's recap the 23-24 regular season for the Los Angeles Kings. So the Los Angeles Kings finished with a record of 44-27-11 for 99 points. They ended up in the top 3 in their division. First round battle with the Edmonton Oilers. Unfortunately, they lost to the Oilers for the 3rd consecutive year. In each year, it's gotten quicker for the Oilers to move past the Los Angeles Kings. It went from 7 games to 6 games to 5 games. So obviously, things have not really... You could say that the overall success rate, the regular seasons have been comparable. They've been lots of, consistent good play, but they haven't gotten over the hump. And if anything, in the playoffs where it matters most, they've made it there, but they're not getting any further ahead and they're losing in fewer games. So you could make an argument that really overall they've taken a step back. So let's see what else that they can do this year to take that next step. And is it, logical that it can happen? Goals for this past year was not the greatest, but it was about just around league average, 254, 17th best in the league. Of course, one of the strongest defensive teams in the league, which was by far their strong point here, 210 against for 3rd best. That was phenomenal. Power play was very respectable, 22.6 at 12th best, and the PK was elite as well at 84.6. for 2nd best. So anything that requires keeping the puck out was solid. They played a 1-3-1 system large part of the year, which is very tough for the opposition from a defensive standpoint. That they've excelled. It's not a fun brand of hockey, and it's not a brand of hockey that allows you to be more offensive, but it's more opportunistic, and you have to have the offensive weapons to take advantage of fewer chances when you do get them. And for the most part, like I said, they've been able to do that. But when we got into the most important times of the year, teams like especially Edmonton has been able to exploit that. So let's take a look at as well as some top performances as individual players on this team throughout the regular season. Adrian Kempe led the way this year with 75 points. Kevin Fiala was next at 73. Anze Kopitar, longtime King and team captain, was 3rd at 70 points. Trevor Moore had a big season as well, big breakthrough. He's been good for a while, but this is really another big step forward, scoring the 30 goal mark for the first time, 31 goals and 57 points, and we saw a big development and big breakthrough, you could say, for Quinton Byfield, taking a big step forward, putting out 55 points. So obviously, there was a time early in his career, a lot of people thought Byfield's development started a little slower. Some were way too quick to use the B word, the best word. Not the case, obviously. He is going to be a really good player. Just the way the Kings have approached his development and where they placed him in the lineup and how he's come along. Yeah, sure, might be a little bit slower than some thought, but he is emerging and will continue to grow and has nowhere near hit his peak here just yet. It's only going to continue getting better for Byfield, moving forward. As far as changes that happened in season, the main one was a coaching change. We saw Todd McClellan be ousted as head coach. Jim Hiller takes over. He was already an assistant coach with the team, so it's an internal change. They then added DJ Smith, who has previously been let go from Ottawa. Of course, he and Jim Hiller had coached together previously with the Maple Leafs, both as assistants under Mike Babcock. So certainly a familiar face for Hiller. And then they took him over the rest of the way. They ended up, getting them to a better, stronger finish, make sure they get into the playoffs. Because before the coaching change, it looked like it was spiraling out of control and that the Kings may not actually make it. That was going to be a real possibility, but they did get in. Unfortunately, they didn't do much more than get in, losing in 5 games in the first round, as I had mentioned. So, in the beginning, Hiller was interim head coach. After the season ended, they went through their process, and we now know, as a recording of this video, that Hiller is the now full-time head coach, signing a multi-year contract extension to remain in that spot for Rob Blake and the Los Angeles Kings. So, obviously, I think it's fair to say Blake knows this roster needs some upgrades, but what do they have internally, and what are they going to look to externally to try to make this team better going into next year? Well, from a cap perspective, they have $20.2 million available, and they have 13 contracts already signed for next year. So that's not a lot of money when you think about it. 20 million's a good amount of money, but when you're signing upwards of 10 players, maybe it's 8 or 9, depending on how many they can carry on the active roster. That's not a lot to go around. And then they have some key players internally that they need to look after as well, which could eat up a chunk of that. For example, let's take a look at their expiring deals internally. Restricted free agents include Quentin Byfield, the breakout star of the year with 55 points. I would suspect that the Kings would like to sign him to a long-term deal. It's only going to get more expensive as time goes on, but will he agree to that, or will he want to go long-term now, or will he want to bet on himself, do a bridge deal, and really cash in more in a couple of years when the cap's even higher and his production's even higher? From a team perspective, it makes more sense to go long-term. From a player perspective, yes, it's nice to have the security, but if you're, willing to bet on yourself and take a chance, then short-term makes more sense for him. But I would suspect they'll push for long-term, but we'll see where it goes. Either way, he needs a new contract, and they'll definitely get that done. Carl Grundstrom, Arthur Kaliev, Blake Lizotte, Jordan Spence, Samuel Fagemo, Alex Turcotte, and Eric Portillo are also restricted free agents. I would suspect a few of those guys may not be back. It's difficult to say 100% if they'll all be qualified. I know that there was talk that guys like Grundstrom and Kaliev may not be. I do know that based on what we've heard, Kaliev is a for sure thing that's a player they would like to move. And I think he would like to move as well, get a new opportunity. Obviously, it hasn't really worked out. He's been in and out of the lineup and just not happy with where things have progressed for him. And I had heard some rumblings that there was a chance Grundstrom wouldn't be qualified. We know Byfield will be for sure. I would suspect Lizotte probably will be as a bottom 6 center for them. Jordan Spence is going to be qualified. Turcotte is expecting a new contract as well. I kind of wondered if he might be a player they look to move, considering how long it's been since he's been drafted and he's still not really a big part of the organization. Like, if you want to, talk, people were using the buzzword on Byfield way too early, as I mentioned, and Turcotte's been around even longer and still, somebody they probably expected to be a top 6 player by now, but it has not materialized, largely because of injuries and other things too. So we'll see. I think most of those players will be back, but I think Grundstrom and Kaliev, even if they are qualified, there's a chance they're going to be moved. On a UFA side of things, you've got Victor Arvidsson, goalie Cam Talbot, veteran Trevor Lewis, and defenseman Matt Roy. I know Arvidsson probably not going back. Lewis, I'm not sure. It's possible maybe he signs a 1-year cheap contract to remain there. I don't know if he's going to continue playing or what his status is. He would not be expensive if they decide to keep things moving with him. Matt Roy is a defenseman who's certainly going to be looking for an increase in pay. I don't know that they can really afford to keep him. I do believe that there will be mutual interest to at least talk and see. How far that goes is hard to say. Talbot, on the other hand, there's lots of talk that the Kings are in the market for a goaltender. They'd like to probably find a more of a bona fide starter who's a little bit younger. I wouldn't be completely rule out the possibility they circle back to him if they can't figure out anything else. They've already signed Riddick, who was going to be a UFA as well. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think they want to run back. I mean, Talbot ended up with a 2.5 goals against and a 913 save percentage. Not horrible by any means, but first half compared to second half, big difference too. He was not nearly as good in the second half. So I'm not sure how they want to go. I don't think that he's a guy you want to ride with too many games. And same time, the way Riddick played, you want to give him 30 games or 35 games. I don't know that you want to do that either. So hard to say what the Kings do, but Talbot's a question mark for me. I think there's a decent chance he's not back, but we'll wait and see where they go. The draft coming up, 2024 draft, they only have 4 picks. They don't have a pick in rounds 2, 3, or 5. So we'll see. They can still get a pretty decent player with their first round pick, but I wouldn't be completely shocked if that pick was up for grabs either. We'll have to see. because they certainly are in a win now mode, trying to take steps forward. So one of the big questions, I guess, moving forward for the offseason, one is, can they change their style of play? I know a lot of players expressed frustration with wanting to get away from the 1-3-1. I know the team is really reluctant because they were willing to try to make changes, and I know from what we've heard from Rob Blake and Jim Hiller that that's certainly something they're working on, but they don't want to lose the strong defensive play. And they obviously credit their system and their style to that, so they got to figure out how to balance letting guys play a little bit different style, a little bit more looser offensively, but at the same time not giving up too much defensively. So that's going to be a big question, but expect a bit of a change in style of play from Los Angeles next year at the request of the players. I know a lot of them made mention of it in their end of season media availability. So we'll see what the coach figures out in that regard. Certainly, like I said, one of the big things they got to figure out as well is Pierre-Luc Dubois. Is there a chance he gets bought out? I know Rob Blake had previously said no. There's still some NHL reporters that are not convinced that that's something they won't look at. Obviously, at this point, the big factor here for Dubois is his age, because when his birthday hits in June, when he goes up one more year in age, then he becomes a two-thirds buyout. And obviously, it basically boils down to if you qualify, for UFA status versus RFA status, which is based on your number of years of experience in the league, determines when a buyout happens, what the calculation is. When you're still younger, usually under the age of, under 26 or under 7 years experience, you can get a 1/3 buyout, and it's a lot cheaper. Well, that's where he is as of today, as of June 13th, as I record this video. That is where things stand right now. But the final may not be over until the 24th. And if the final goes full 7 games, then he'll already have his birthday, and that will change. The window opens for buyouts 48 hours after the cup's awarded. So that very much could play a big factor here, is how many games are in the Stanley Cup final. But if he can be bought out as a 1/3 buyout, yes, it's a long-term hit, but it's really not a ton of money. It saves them a lot of actual cash. And I have to think they would at least look at it. Or do they try to trade him? How do they get him going? He's a big issue. They're paying a lot of money into this player, and it just did not work. And a lot of it, sometimes you have to think based on his body language and what you see on the ice. Sometimes it looks like effort, and it's frustrating. He's a player that always seems to leave you wanting more. He's had his moments where he's been dominant, and he's had his moments where he looks lazy, and it's, that's just my take on him. And he's a player that I think would be challenging to trade. Who's going to, they're not going to be able to trade without eating a decent amount of money on the contract. They're just not. Nobody's taking that, where things are. But a buyout, they'd have complete control over that, and he could walk and go sign wherever he wants. So we'll see. I don't think a buyout is going to happen, but I really got to think they got to look at it, right? I mean, something's going to give. They got to figure out how to get him going or get him gone, one of the two, because he was a major drag on their cap and on their performance this year. And if he can be a dominant player like he can be, then that could be all the difference right there. Or not all the difference, but a huge difference in how this team performs next year. Obviously, like I said, the Byfield extension is going to be big as well. I know that Rob Blake's probably going to want to try to get that done sooner than later, because it's going to be one of the bigger contracts they sign internally this offseason, and clearly having that taken care of will give them a better snapshot of where the rest of their cap situation sits and how much money they have to play with in other roles. Obviously, they got to figure out goaltending. They need to figure out some other contracts here and get some guys signed, and they don't have a lot of players that are really big money. That's why I don't really think that the likelihood of keeping Matt Roy is, I don't think it's great, just because of all the moving parts here. Some guys are not going to want to wait around too long and wait and see what LA has up their sleeve before they can, have other offers that they might need to take to kind of secure themselves. So we'll see. At the end of the day, like I said, there might be some RFAs that are not qualified. Doesn't mean that all of them won't be back, but like some of them, like Kaliev and Grunstrom, I just think it's time. But goaltending is the biggest question for me is, who's your starting goaltender? Is Dubois gone, or how do you get him going? and getting Byfield extended. But at the end of the day, they need to make some changes to the style of play to be more offensive. They have a lot of the key players there that can be offensive, and if they adjust their style to that, then allow them to score more, which should allow them to be more successful and have a better chance at actually winning a playoff series next year. But as far as external moves go, the main one will be goaltending. Otherwise, you're probably looking at a few depth moves in free agency, and that's probably about it, because I don't think that their cap is going to allow too much unless they end up with some hockey trades, which at this point it's hard to predict. But let me know what you think down below in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.